Welcome to the Digital Agency Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Dan Englander.
Jason, nice to have you.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be here.
For sure. So this is, I think, a very juicy topic, and it's one that I think causes like a lot of hand wringing for agency owners and for salespeople and for anybody involved in marketing, which is marketing automation, right? And like how far you can go in either a really powerful direction or how much time you can waste if you do it wrong or you just don't have any idea what you're doing. So I think it's a really compelling topic. And with that, yeah, I'd love to give you the floor if you wouldn't mind just talking a bit about your background and how you came to starting Cultivize.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I think it's a fun journey, but I started as a graphic designer, worked in agencies in Manhattan for a few years, started my first branding and web development company back in 2002. I had that business for roughly about 15 years, sold it. But during the course of the end of that business, I saw that a lot of companies, including our own clients, were spending a lot of money on inbound marketing. And what I started having conversations with them about is, well, what channels are actually producing the best quality leads and how much revenue you're actually generating from those marketing efforts. And I was surprised to find that so many companies really didn't have the answer. It's not that they didn't want to know the answer, they just didn't have a means to get there. And so that's when I decided to sell my old business to start Cultivize with the one core mission to help businesses not only be able to connect the dots between their marketing and their sales, but to really give them a practical and easy to follow process and tool set to enable their sales team to be better salespeople and to focus on the people that are, as I say, raising their hand that might be underneath the ether that their sales team may not know about. And so today we help businesses with lead nurturing. We don't do any inbound marketing. We don't do any web development or any graphic design outside of, building email templates and landing pages. And so we're in a very niche market, and it's a great fit because we complement an existing marketing team or an external marketing team that our clients work with.
Then that makes sense. And we'll definitely get into what you're doing and the tactics and strategies and everything.
Sure.
But to go back to when you're running an agency, because I think that's covers a lot, a lot of our listenership are in the middle of running an agency. They might be looking to greener pastures and everything. And it sounds like you saw an opportunity here with lead nurture, with marketing automation. If you don't mind me asking, like, what else was going on there? Like what made you want to like close up shop, sell the agency, and go towards from a creative pursuit to one that from the outside looking in seems much more technical, if that's fair to say?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely right. Well, a couple of things. I mean, one is a little bit of a selfish decision. After being in the world of, marketing for over 25 years, I got a little burnt out, to be perfectly honest. And, doing that creative work for so long, I was looking for a change. So that was part of the motivation. The second piece was I saw that email marketing in a very general sense was taking a big pivot. Of course, there's the players, Constant Contact, MailChimp, and all these others out there that provide a good basic service. But I saw that as a dying technology. And I saw that the elevation of marketing automation was going to be a lot more significant. And I really wanted to invest in that future where I saw businesses heading.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And what, I guess with the perspective you have now, like, how do you feel about the burnout of working, the creative agency grind versus the work you're doing now? Like, is the burnout less? Is it different? Like, how does it feel running your service like this versus what you remember then?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's a huge difference, right? So, I mean, as you know, and anybody listening that's in the ad agency world, it's a lot of project-based work. It's great to have clients retainer, but not always easy to get. But even if you're fortunate to have that or doing the project work, it's always chasing one project to another. And generally, no matter how well you scope out a project, whether it be a website or a brochure or a branding campaign, whatever it may be, it's always going to run a little bit longer. It's always going to take a little bit more time than you thought. And so what I found in this business model, it's a lot easier to control expectations and also to drive the results, mostly for the fact that we're doing all the work as the Cultivize team. So in other words, we're not telling our client, hey, this is how you build a nurturing campaign. We're saying, let's develop a strategy and we do the work for you. And then we just make sure that everything is moving smoothly. So having more control has made a huge difference.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And with that, I'd love to bring things to Cultivize and to kind of let people wrap their heads around that. Like what happens, day one, you land a new client. What are you typically doing? What does the process look like?
So I'm a very hands-on operations type person. So even though we have a team behind us, actually some of our teammates even used to work at SharpSpring, but the way that we approach it, Dan, is like this. It's a conversation, typically multiple conversations, but we want to dive in, understand, not just at the high level, what does the business do, but when you get a lead, how do you qualify a lead? How do you use your sales team manage that lead through the sales process? When you're thinking about different marketing initiatives, how far in advance are you planning that? Or are you a kind of shotgun approach type mentality where you're like, okay, we're going to try Google Ads and we're going to kick that off tomorrow, and there's not a lot of planning involved and you just go for it. And so we want to understand how that business operates, and then also where there are pitfalls in that business operation, meaning, oh, Jason, we take a lot of time to move data from MailChimp to QuickBooks, or this or that. And it takes, Donna 2 hours a week to do that. And we start uncovering where there's a lot of inefficiencies with the business and where we can use automation, not just on the sales and marketing side, but also on the productivity of team members within the company. And so that's really how we understand, okay, what is the game plan going to be? And then we jump in and we start building that out. And truth be told, it's very often a phased approach, Dan. We have aspirations. Some clients have bigger aspirations than others, and they want to do a whole lot. But you and I both know we can't do everything at once. So we'll come up with the immediate quick wins we know we can get, typically in the first 30, 45 days. We focus on those and we'll go into phase 2, phase 3, et cetera. For us, it's an ongoing relationship, and we're trying to constantly move the needle to help the client get more out of this relationship than just a one and done type project.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's a lot of different places we can go with that. I guess the first thing is, let's talk about SharpSpring a little bit. So can you talk about what SharpSpring is as a platform, just objectively, pros and cons with it? Because I think some people are on HubSpot, some people are on SharpSpring or other things, and just kind of what gravitated you towards it versus any other platform you could work with.
Yeah. So you mentioned HubSpot. It's a great reference point because HubSpot is certainly more of a household name than SharpSpring. Both systems are pretty much complementary to each other. They'll do really what you need to do. The biggest difference for us, and before we even get into that, I'll let you know how we chose SharpSpring. So I found SharpSpring personally about 15 years ago, almost when they started as a company. And the reason that I liked it is that I saw the vision they had for the product, but I also liked the simplicity of the product. You and I both know we've worked with a lot of technology, right, Dan, over the years. And certain technology is very easy to use, and other you kind of scratch in your head. And even with the user manual, you're like, okay, how do I use this piece of software? And so they had that in mind. And so I knew that the companies we were going for, even though they would be well-established businesses and be a little bit tech savvy, perhaps, we didn't want to bring them a piece of technology that was very complicated to use. And everybody knows, the old joke of, Confuciansoft and Infusionsoft and others, where a lot of technology, it's very robust and it's very capable, but it's, again, hard to use. So that was what lured me to it. It was also the price point. Today, we're happy to be able to bring our clients into SharpSpring for roughly $15,000 to $20,000 or less per year compared to something like HubSpot. And the biggest value we tell our clients is that we are not a software provider. We didn't build SharpSpring. It's not our tool. We're a licensed reseller and a platinum partner, one of about 30 in the world. But the difference is that you go to HubSpot, you go to Pardot, you go to Salesforce, you go to any of these other platforms, you then have to hire a consultant to help you actually develop the strategy, implement it, train your team, and then help you along the way. And you and I both know those consultants can be, 10, 20 grand a year, depending upon how much you want to do with the technology. And so for us, our clients, we make it easy where it's a one-stop shop. They're getting the software from us, they're getting the strategy, the coaching, the implementation. They don't have to jump around to different vendors to get to the end, solution.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's funny because, like, with software models, if you just think about how many successful runaway, wins there've been, a lot of them are defined by the things they don't do, right? If you think about Basecamp, it's essentially a message board you can upload files to. Slack is a chat room, with some bells and whistles on it. So yeah. I definitely see why that would be compelling and everything. And to go back to what you're actually doing, because I think when you say there's these words that we all use, like lead nurture, these phrases, right? and they can mean anything and everything. It could mean like a whole podcast, like what we're producing today. It could mean writing a 500-word blog post. So what constraints do you put in? How do you decide like what you're going to create for clients versus what do they have to do themselves? And how do you kind of manage that beast?
Yeah, absolutely. So for clients that have a team, whether that team consists of some people that can produce content, that want to learn how to operate within the system to set up, workflows and other things, we can certainly teach them to do that, or we can do it for them completely, or work hand in hand. But the way that I would define, to answer your question, Dan, to me, a lead nurture campaign is that somebody comes into your world, right? So let's say today, your phone rings, you get an inbound email, or I say, hey, Dan, I just spoke to John. I think he'd be a great fit for you guys. Here's an email introduction. Now he enters your world. The question is, what happens next, right? Perhaps there's going to be a phone call or two. Maybe there's a fit, maybe there's not a fit, but we all know that not everything is a fit right away. And so what happens typically is that a salesperson will sort of put that to the side. Hopefully they create a reminder for themselves to follow up down the road. But even if they do that, is there another follow-up created? And is there anything going on between that 1 month or 6 month or 3 month period between the salesperson remembering, hopefully, to reach back out to John? And most companies don't have a system to do that. And so what happens is that John may have loved that conversation he had with you, John, Dan, right? And so it just wasn't the right time, or maybe he didn't have the budget. But now 6 months, a year later, he's like, oh, I really need this particular service. Man, what happened to that guy, Dan? I haven't heard from him in ever. But I found this other company online that does something similar to Dan. I'll just buy it from them, right? And so when you become, out of mind, then it's very easy to forget about that prior conversation and the good feeling that you had. So lead nurturing campaign really helps just create that relationship, between the prospect and that salesperson of the company, and just to kind of keep that warm and fuzzy feeling, right? Because whenever that moment arrives, when, okay, yes, we have the budget, we need this right now, you want to be in front of that person. And what better way to do that than to keep educating and informing your prospect to say, these are the ways we help. This is how we've helped other people, and you're not selling through that whole process, really just educating, and that's really our approach, is just provide good content that educates the prospects. So when they are ready to buy, hopefully they're buying from our clients.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I have a few more questions about that, but I think first, I know that you're partnering with agencies quite a bit. And can you talk about that a little bit? Like, how does that partnership typically work? And also, what are you finding on the ground when you dig into like how most agencies are using marketing automation or not using it properly, and so on?
It's a great question. So yes, there are many agencies that are really good at, PPC, or they're doing, direct mail, or whatever they're doing, right? They're doing some type of lead gen for their clients, or any combination of there above. But what they don't often have the bandwidth for, or the technical expertise, or perhaps they don't want to make the financial investment, is say, hey, you know what? Yeah, HubSpot, SharpSpring, all these things sound really good, but it's going to take time. It's going to take money. We're going to have to hire people to learn it. That's going to take a year or two for us to really master it before we can sell it. And you know what? We don't want to bother with that. We don't want to dilute what we're really good at. So typically, a lot of agencies will just walk away from that. They'll just say, okay, you know what? We're just going to do lead gen. The client will have to figure that on their own as far as the lead nurturing goes, and their CRM and how that all ties in. And what we've discovered is that a lot of agencies love the idea of being able to bring to their clients, say, yeah, we can help with lead gen, but guess what? We can also make sure that you have a proper CRM set up, that you have a sales tool set up for your sales team. And then it's also giving the agency the data they need to say, okay, yeah, we're producing leads for you. And this is what is actually happening in the back end with the sales team, right? So it empowers the sales team to have that information, because right now they don't have it. They don't know what happens after the leads get generated. And so the benefit is not only helping their client, but because of our ability to price the way we price, Dan, we're able to give a kickback to the agency. So what happens now, the agency is making several $1,000s or more per year per client without doing any work. So now it's an additional revenue stream. And you and I both know that not every agency has the luxury of having, a $5,000, $10,000, $20,000 a month retainer from, 50 clients. So any additional income that they can get is really helping their bottom line. So it's basically a double win, bringing in more cash to the agency without them putting any investment in any work, but then also giving a better quality deliverable to their clients.
Yeah, that makes sense. And there's in a previous conversation, you talked about the department store metaphor. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I look at it is that, so let's say you and I are walking through the mall, right? And we pass by a department store. Now, an aggressive salesperson, in the analogy would be, you're walking by a store, you have no interest in the store, someone grabs you, hey, come in here, check this out, look what we got on sale. And you're like, well, I'm not interested in sports jackets. I go to work in a t-shirt and shorts. I don't need that. And you get turned off. And even when you need that sports jacket, you probably won't go back to that store because of how they treated you. But the reverse of that is, oh, I'm really in the market for a sports jacket. You walk into a store, you start looking through the rack, and a salesperson, politely comes over and says, Dan, we also have some great, ties to go with that jacket. Can I interest you in showing you those ties? And now it's a personal relationship that is being built, but the salesperson is doing it because they saw you had interest. And so we can do the exact same thing on the digital end of the CRM. And what I mean by that is our system, SharpSpring, allows the salesperson to say, oh, Dan just came to the website yesterday, and this is what he was looking at. He didn't fill any form out on the website, but that's kind of interesting because I've been trying to leave him voicemails and send him emails, and he's been ghosting me, but here he is back on the website. I'm going to use that information to my advantage because obviously there's some level of interest Dan has. And so what we do is we arm the sales team with data and insight about who's taking action. And as I say, raising their hand with information, otherwise they wouldn't even know it's happening. It's all well and good that people send out monthly email marketing campaigns, and they're important. But if you don't have your email marketing campaign tied to your CRM and to your sales team needs to know who's clicking on those emails in real time and who's going to the website. And if you're not sharing that data with them in a meaningful way, I'm not saying it's a complete waste of time, but it's not being as beneficial as if it was connected.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of questions there. So I think one is, how much of this is sort of like an alert system for salespeople versus how much of this is just doing it for them and just like automatically sending out a case study or a white paper or whatever it might be. Like, how do you sort of determine what's an alert and what's kind of on the shoulders of the salesperson versus what's going out for them? If that makes sense. Yeah.
It's really a good question. The answer is that it's completely up to the client, right? And to what we think are the right objectives and the right mechanics of how we want that to work. Naturally, if someone goes to multiple pages of a website or maybe, watches a webinar or downloads a white paper, that could be a really strong signal we want the salesperson to know. Whereas if somebody, maybe just went to the homepage or did something less of rank of importance, if you will, then maybe they get an automated email a day or two later from the salesperson. Hey, just checking in with you, just want to see how things are going. You want to get on a call, yada, yada. So it's a combination of automated emails, it's a combination of alerts, but it's also a really fundamental piece we didn't really talk about in depth is the interaction of the human interaction, right? So it's the salesperson needs to pick up the phone and call that person. They can't just rely on the automation probing the person and expecting that person is going to book a call or call them. So you got to think about your sales organization, your sales team. You want them to be proactive, not arrogantly aggressive, where they're being too pushy. But you want them to just pick up the phone, a phone call, send a follow-up email, and that's a huge changer because not a lot of people do that these days. They just rely on. I just want things to come easy for me.
Totally. Yeah. And let's talk about that a little bit because I've managed a lot of salespeople or, could kind of have a newer salesperson with us now. And there's, that person's getting up every morning. They're thinking, okay, I've got to get my monthly commissions. I've got to close these deals. And there's kind of like different tasks they could be doing, right? So the most high value are probably those latest stage proposal stage opportunities or whatever the equivalent might be, depending on the industry. Then there's campaigns that are outbound. There's people that might be agreeing to talk right off the bat. And then there's inbound leads that might be like referral or ads or whatever it might be. Where does the marketing automation, the kind of like MQL middle stage fit into things, right? So the people that, to use your metaphor, are window shopping or kind of like poking around at the suit in the department store. Where should that prioritize into that salesperson's day?
So I would say this, if the salesperson, and hopefully they do, has a CRM that's monitoring this activity, I would, while you're having your coffee or tea in the morning, look to say, okay, who's been on our website in the last 24 hours? Who's been engaging in our email content, right? Who's looking at a presentation we sent them a couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden they're now looking at it. Those are the people, in my opinion, in my experience, that should be focused on first, because those are the people that are engaged. Someone you sent a quote to 3 months ago that still hasn't said yes or no, obviously they're dodging for a reason. So yeah, you could keep calling them, but to me, that should be a little more like the calls in the afternoon. The calls in the morning should be the people that are showing signs of activity. And if you don't have that type of technology, then really, I guess it's just about prioritizing who haven't you spoken to in a while. And every sales organization is different. Everyone has different sales cadences and the length of the sales cycle. But I always try to call people at least once a month at a minimum. Sometimes if I know someone is ready to go and they're like, okay, yeah, we're just trying to work on final budgets, I'll call them once a week and follow up with emails. And in a very soft, hey, just checking in type way. So that would be my recommendation. If you have the technology, use it. If you don't, try to be smart about who you're calling and where you're spending your time.
Yeah, you basically have this kind of like alert system, and then that tells you where to focus the beginning of your day. And then if there's 3 people in the lobster trap, great. If there's 10, great. And then you just kind of go from there. So
exactly,
that makes sense to me. So you're the second guest that gets to experience our new segment, Overrated, Underrated, which I have stolen shamelessly from Tyler Cowan in his podcast, Conversations with Tyler. With this, we're going to do a lightning round. I'm going to throw out a phrase related to, what we're talking about, a topic, an idea. You say overrated, underrated, properly rated, and why. Does that sound good? You ready?
That sounds great. Let's go.
Awesome. Chatbots.
Completely underrated. The reason being is that I don't think people are taking more advantage of chatbots. They're a great way to provide information based on specific questions that people have. And it also alleviates the need for getting a live chat person that may not be educated about the product or service to field questions. So if you don't have a chatbot, I would definitely look at one, but also look at Google Analytics to see what pages people are going to on your website most often. And that's where you should put your chatbot.
Got it. Company blogs.
It's all about content. So I would say overrated, and this is for the reason, I think people put out a lot of content just for the sake of putting out content. They're not strategic about it. So if you're going to spend the time writing a blog, think about how does that tie into your audience? How are you going to re-leverage that blog for social media, for email newsletters, and make sure that the blog actually provides value. Don't just write content for the sake of writing content. You want somebody to actually be able to walk away and take something away from that blog post.
Salespeople writing content.
Terrible idea. So I say for the most part, salespeople are not good at articulating the values of a business, the proposition perhaps of what the offer is. So you definitely want to have the marketing team or even a company like Cold Device come in that's got experience writing sales emails. And the other reason too is that you might have, let's say you have even 4 salespeople, 2 might be amazing writers and doing an awesome job. The other 2, not so much. So if you're controlling the content, then everybody's on an even playing field and you're giving the better odds of getting your entire sales team to get more wins.
Yeah, that makes sense. Direct mail.
Direct mail. I think direct mail is definitely underrated. I think we live in a world of digital. Everybody's focused on digital. And if you've got a product or a service that can tie into direct mail or even door hangers, an example would be like a landscaping company. If you're doing projects in the area, whatever that might be, you just put in a pool or you're, doing a new sidewalk or whatever for someone's home, and you hang dog tags in the area of where you just did that work, then people know about the work, right? They can see it, right? So they can appreciate it. So I think direct mail is definitely a great adjacent component to marketing when it's the right fit. It's not always, I wouldn't do it for the sake of doing it.
Sense. New sales and marketing software products.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I would say overrated for the reason that there are thousands and thousands. I got a great chart that's literally got like 100,000 pieces of software on it and all different categories. There's so much software out there. You and I both know that. The challenge is that some of the software is great at doing like one micro thing really, really well. But then it's like, how does all this software talk to each other? And often companies aren't leveraging one piece of software to another. And so they wind up with a big tech stack of lots of little things, doing lots of little different little things, but nothing is cohesively connected. So I would say software is great, but really understand like, what are my needs? What are my challenges as my business? And is this software actually going to be the right fit to do that? And who's going to actually help me use the software properly?
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that's a great one to end on, Jason. And I think you've aced the segment of overrated, underrated. So thank you so much. Yeah,
well, thanks. That was a lot of fun, Dan.
Yeah, likewise. And getting towards the end of our time, you've got some really juicy giveaways. So I'd love to, give the opportunity to our audience to explore those, and I'll give you the floor to talk about those.
Yeah. So the first is we have on our website cultivize.com, cultivize.com. You'll find our lead nurturing playbook, and that's designed to teach you how lead nurturing works, how you can use the best practices for developing a lead nurturing campaign, even perhaps with your existing technology. It's filled in with lots of diagrams, lots of worksheets, lots of really juicy content to help understand what we've been talking about today. So that's a free download. The other thing also that we'll post here when we publish the video, we're doing for a limited time a free analysis of your current email newsletter. And what that consists of is looking at more than just open rate and click rate. We're able to identify how many people are finding that email in their spam folder, in a promotions folder, let's say on Gmail. If there's any HTML or image issues or link issues that are flagging that content as spam. We're also able to check things like SPF records and other records to make sure that the email is being perceived, if you will, as a good quality sender from wherever it's coming from. So very often companies are sending out monthly newsletters or weekly newsletters. They just look at open rates, click rates. They really don't understand what's behind all those layers. So we're offering that free analysis, and there'll be a link that we can share to book that call to get that results and study done for you guys.
That sounds great. And we could probably do a whole other episode on deliverability and how it's often the thing that's stopping campaigns in their tracks and everything like that. So it seems like that's kind of the forefront, or like ground zero of where the marketing battles are being fought a lot these days, is with deliverability. So hopefully we'll do that before long, Jason. Thank you so much for coming on, and let's do it again soon.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. I really appreciate it. And the one thing I will think, just a little teaser, even if you're sending out an email and you're getting, let's say, a 60% open rate, which is usually unheard of, 30-40% is good, for most companies. You got to think, if 30% of the people are opening up your email and you're happy with that, what's happening to the 70% that are not opening your email? And that's a huge number. And so that's something certainly to focus on another segment and just to think about with your own email marketing. But today, I really appreciate your time, Dan, and inviting me to the show.
Likewise, yeah. And let's talk about that again soon, because there's a lot to uncover there. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, take care.